because I've registered each of you, and that is kind of my role this week. So Pete's the kind of, you know, cult leader, as we like to call him, in our social circle, and then I'm just the ops guy. So I will, you know, I've already been asked 2 questions this morning that I haven't been able to answer. Like, where's there a chemist, and where can I get some glue? It's a bit early for glue, but anyway, that's usually after Pete's talk. Somebody's looking for glue, but anyway. Yeah, so I'll do my best to try and resolve those, but then that is also my role here, is to help the functional wheels of industry turn and point you in the directions of X, Y, and Z. So just so you know, that's what I'm here for. I am your person if you need to ask, either on Facebook or, you know, or in person or whatever. I can usually know somebody who can do a thing, or where you can get a thing, apart from glue. And yeah, I suppose Pete's talked about me, so I'm going to talk about Pete. Just to get this out of the way, for those of you who are new here, I haven't read any of his books because I don't care. Okay? And it's not that I don't believe. I'm already, you know, I just don't do the God thing anymore. I may have used to rap for Jesus, but it's not part of my life. So don't ask me what I think about Pete's work, because the answer is I have no idea. But I do love this. I love hanging out with all of you. Right, just a little bit about today. Oh yeah, and just in terms of what we've tried to do this year, if you've been before, again, I know a lot of you haven't been before, so I'm sorry if I keep saying that. What we've tried to do this year is kind of make it a little bit more spread out. So every year we get feedback saying, you know, there's just, my head's melted, I just need a little bit more time, I wanted to talk it out, I wanted to lie in my bed and turn the lights off and cry, you know, stuff like that. So we tried it, over time, we've sort of tried to give a little bit more room to breathe, let's call it that, yeah? And this year we've done that even further, which is why we're starting a little bit earlier, even on the Monday, and sort of giving quite a lot of sort of socially stuff, and we brought the pre-game drinks into the official program, because we want people to feel comfortable with each other and be mates, you know. So hopefully that'll work. Now today there's a brief talk from Pete. Not a brief, but there you go. A talk from Pete, and then there'll be an hour for lunch. Most days it's an hour and a half for lunch, but today it's just an hour. And then those of you've all told me that you're going to sign up for one tour or another. If you're going to the street art tour, if you can meet, actually don't meet here, meet outside the Duke of York, which is where we were drinking last night. So if you meet there at like 2 o'clock, then we'll take it from there. If you are going on a bus journey with Pete, there's a bar called the National, which is on High Street, which is like, you come out this door, you'll cross a small street, if you turn right, you'll cross a small street, and then you get to a big street, it's like High Street, right? And the National is just on the corner there. Pete is leading that, so maybe even if you could meet here at 5 to 2, in case people feel like they can't find that, and then you can sort of gather people. But go either straight there, or it's pretty easy to find. There'll be a bus on High Street at 2 o'clock to take you on your little jaunt up the river. And then this evening, oh yeah, and then after that, sorry, so one of the things, I'm sorry, I'm just going to go through this because sometimes the descriptions aren't really like very obvious, and I want to tell you what we're trying to do. Sorry if it's boring. So at 4 o'clock then, back in the green room in here, like we've sort of created a particular kind of meeting kind of point, okay? And I've put some close-up magicians who are amazing. And so it's just, again, a chance to get to know each other a little bit. And we've arranged it so that the street art tour and also then the bus tour will be finished so that people can, excellent, thank you. So people will, you'll be back in time to do that. It's all kind of optional. I mean, you're here, this is not school. You can like literally skip every single piece that Pete does, and that's okay, because you're a paying customer. You can take or leave whatever you like, okay? There's nothing like, I sometimes get, is this compulsory? Nothing's compulsory, right? You can do whatever you like. You don't even have to come at all. There's some people who haven't even come at all. Anyway, so it's all optional, right? And then this evening, there's two things. One is in Oh Yeah, it should be on the map, okay? So it's not, Oh Yeah is literally just around the corner. And then the dark horse is across the road from the bar that we were last night, if you were there. So it's pretty straightforward. And again, it's kind of entertainment, but it's hopefully entertainment that's thoughtful entertainment. That's what we're trying to do. Okay. Couple of other real quick things. There is a kind of sort of shop-ish this year. We have a couple of things to sell, basically. So we have badges, a pack which includes a weight bag from previous years, which I have left over, which is quite nice. Not as nice as this year's, but it's quite nice. And we're going to give away a tract and a badge. So there, we can tell them if you want them, no pressure. And we'll hopefully, when we have a couple of authors throughout the week, we'll have their books to sell as well. And the final thing I want to say is just about what this is, okay? So it's really, really important that we're clear what we're at, okay? We are not at a youth retreat. We are not at a therapy session. Pete and me are not qualified to look after you, okay? And you know, in some ways, what I've learned about Pete's work, even though I pay no attention to it, is that it does bring things out in people that may be difficult, okay? And some people might struggle with some of the things and maybe wrestling with things and maybe here because they're wrestling with things that are difficult, yeah? Now, I'm not a social worker, right? And Pete is not a social worker, right? That doesn't mean to say that we don't care, but we're not here to fix those things, but what can help fix those things is community, okay? And this is our community. For these next 4 days, you guys are my brothers and sisters, right? That's who we are. That's what community is. This is a pop-up community. That's what a festival should be. It's like, we're here, we're community for a while, and then we're gonna go back to our ordinary lives, right? So it's a safe space, but look out for one another, okay? Because that's what you do in community, yes? Can we all sign up to that? I mean, you know, that's optional as well. You can say fuck you all, I don't care. But like if at least a few of you would go like, yeah, I'd like to hold hands and think come by that. Okay. Anyway, yes. Are we kind of okay with that? Yeah, is that okay? So look out for one another and sort of be supportive and all that kind of stuff, right? Yes. Okay. So I'm gonna, you know, Pete gave me a wonderful introduction there. So I'm trying to think of really dirty stories that I have. I know them better than any of you. That's just but anyway, we'll not get into that. Get me drunk. So for the next, we're gonna start the talky stuff now. So Pete's gonna do an hour, and then an hour for lunch, and then back to the talks. Operationally, are we clear? Yep. Okay. I'm gonna be sitting right there because
Yeah. You hold the mic here, by the way. It's of no use. It's just like
it's my fake box. Like it's like my rapper kind of.
Yeah. All right. So I want to pick up actually on something Adam's talking about in relation to why this is called Wake. But most of my talking bits, I'm actually going to try to get some of the questions and concerns and thoughts that you're bringing to this. Because to be honest with you, you can get a lot of me online. You know, unfortunately for you, there's a lot of me talking somewhere on YouTube. And so it's not like in the old days where every time I talked, it was the first time people had heard the Seamus story. It was the first time, you know, people had heard this parable and it was interesting. Most of you are here because you followed this work for a while. And it's not like, oh, now you've paid the 300 or whatever quid, so you get the secret that I haven't told everybody online, right? There is no secret. The secret is there is no secret. But what you do get is we get an opportunity to have a more intimate conversation. And so at various points during the next 4 days when I get up, I'll start by talking about something and then get some questions from people and take it from there. And then on the last day, I'm going to do a breakout session where we can, for anybody who's really into the philosophy and the theology stuff, you can go to that breakout, and that's where we'll kind of talk about dead philosophers. So that's what we'll do. Also, hopefully you've all got your packs, no expense. Spared. It's not what I say, no expense at all was put into them. We have, if you're wondering about the banana, Adam swears that it is a great hangover cure.
Oh, yeah, I meant to say that, sorry.
Yeah. I know, yeah, people kind of wonder whether there's symbolic significance or anything, but no, it is a hangover here.
There also, I don't think the Liver Drivers more, these are Belfast City guides, which usually should have been in your bag if I haven't better organized. But you can just like not just detect it in your bag.
And that just tells you stuff is going on?
It's just like it's the standard tourist Belfast guides will have a map in it, and probably where you can get blue.
So, what I want to start with then is this idea of, Adam mentioned it in this very caring way of we don't care about you, that you may be here because of some sort of, something that's happened in your life where your worldview, your ideology, your religious background is somehow shaken. That's actually generally how people connect with pyrotheology initially, is that the worldview that once sustained you has somehow begun to weaken. And that's kind of the first step into kind of pyrotheology. But that isn't what pyrotheology is about at all. In most worldviews, most religious systems have a place for doubt, complexity, and ambiguity. Most religious systems have a place when things go wrong. They give an explanation for why that is. They can create space for you to mourn to a greater or lesser extent. The difference, I think, with pyrotheology, too interestingly, most confessional theology, to liberal and progressive theology, also to New Age mysticism, Gnosticism, all of those positions. The difference is very depressing. As soon as I say this, it sounds depressing, so I'm going to spend 4 days trying to convince you that it's not depressing. But it does. Is that most of these confessional systems want to say that beneath the traumas that have happened to you, the contingent things that have rocked your world, there is an underlying harmony and wholeness and a way to kind of get back to a place of completeness from that brokenness. And in pyrotheology, kind of the idea is, no, there's not. there is actually no way back from the brokenness. Because actually the brokenness is something that is inherent to being human. It's inherent to existence itself. And that weirdly, the way to find joy and a way to find depth and meaning in life is actually weirdly to go deeper into that traumatic space, to that difficult place. And what happens in our lives is we may have difficult things that happen to us 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 times. But each time we are able to cover over those things. Each time that we confront doubts, guilt, sense of meaninglessness, the loss of someone we love, the sense of our own imminence, each time we confront these experiences, we can find a way to kind of like cover it over in sacred and secular ways, whether it's through prayer or going to the movies or going to the pub. Right? We've got all various ways to cover over these traumas that happen to us. But at a certain point, one of these traumas just maybe shakes us more than the others. And we can't get back to some system that seems to give us all of the answers, and we have to do something else. I'll just very briefly talk about this journey more deeply into the trauma, and then we'll unpack it over the next few days. So the first step is something happens to you contingently. Something occurs that gets you to rethink everything, that disturbs your life, that comes in and shakes everything up. And that's an apocalyptic event. Apocalypse is the incoming of something that completely destroys your world, and also offers the possibility of a new world. An apocalyptic event is something you can't put into your diary. It's not something that you can predict. It's something that comes from nowhere. It might be the birth of a child. It might be the loss of a job. Something's talking. It might be whatever it is, something comes in that you couldn't predict, and it throws everything off course. So we attempt to cover over that. But the next step is potentially going to, hold on a second, this lack and this trauma that I'm experiencing is also experienced by others. It's something that's shared. This actually unifies me to the people who are around me. My loss is particular to me. No one else has experienced the loss that I have experienced. But there's something about loss that's part of being human. That's the Buddhist parable that I've told often about a woman whose child dies. So that is a singular event. Her child has died. And she is rocked by this. And the story is she wraps the child's body in linen, and she wraps that body to her room. And she goes in search of someone who can resuscitate her child. She goes to faith healers and witch doctors, and no one can help. But the story goes that some elders say that high up in the mountains, away from everyone, there's a holy man so close to the divine, he can even raise the dead. And so she goes in search of this holy man. She eventually finds this little wooden shack high up in the mountain, away from everyone. And she knocks on the door, and an old man comes to the door. She bursts into tears, and she says, I don't know if you're the one they talk about in the village. I don't know if you can help me, but my child has died, and I must have her back. And the old man takes pity on her and says, yes, I am the one they talk about, and I can help you. I need to make a potion, and the potion requires ingredients. And one of those ingredients is a handful of mustard seeds taken from a home that has not been burned by the black sun of suffering that has scorched your life. So go back, get some mustard seeds and bring them to me. And then she goes back into the village, and as you probably know, she goes from house to house. But she cannot find one home that has been untouched by death and suffering and lack. And yet, as she hears the story of other people's troubles and sufferings, she gradually comes to terms with her own until she is able to bury her child in the earth. So what that story does is it shifts from your individual suffering to this is something that joins me and connects me with other people. And that experience is kind of an experience of mourning and an experience of healing. The next level is where it gets more interesting, is the next step of pyrotheology is to say that it's not just what's called ontic, right, which is basically your contingent suffering that happens to you that I don't share. It's not just existential, which is the second level, which is, in different ways we've all experienced lack and trauma in some sort of way. The next level could be called ontological, which is there's actually something about lack that is built into the very nature of reality itself. Right? So when you experience this trauma, it's not just yours, it's not just what unifies us all as human beings. This is something that weirdly unifies us with the nature of being itself. If you've seen the film Annihilation, it's a Netflix movie, it's just come out, you can get it on Netflix. It's interesting because it's about a comet, it hits the planet Earth, and what happens is it's basically got some sort of alien organism. And this organism creates what's called a shimmer, which is an ever-increasing border that's threatening to engulf the entire planet. And what's happening in the space before the shimmer is basically our DNA is all getting mixed up with the DNA of plants and other animals, so it's fundamentally reconfiguring the Earth. Four scientists enter into the shimmer to find out what's going on, to try to get to the source and try to stop it. And what's interesting is the annihilation doesn't refer particularly to the alien life form. The annihilation refers to something in human beings that's self-destructive. So the leader of the team says to a biologist, the leader of the team is a psychologist, and the biologist is asking her, why are you leading this team? Or no, I think, she said, why would my husband, because her husband went into the shimmer, returns 1 year later and is all messed up. He's the first person to return from this alien space. And she's asking the psychologist, why would my husband have volunteered to go into the shimmer when nobody returns? And the psychologist said, well, you know, you think you have a perfect marriage, you think everything was going well, but there's something in us that's self-destructive. So in one sense, he went in there and it's self-destructive act. And then she said, you should know this, because this is not just in our psychology, this is hardwired into our cellular structure, this destructive element. And so these 4 scientists go into the shimmer, but interestingly, all of them are the annihilation. All of them want to die for various reasons. Right? They're all basically messed up and they're all going in there for self-destructive reasons. And then you can see the last act of the movie. I won't spoil it, but as a self-destructive act. Was that spoiling it? I don't know. But you know, it's hard to interpret exactly what's going on. I interpret it as the ultimate annihilation. But the idea in the movie is that there is this fundamental trauma and self-destructive side to what it is to be human. And interestingly, there are various names for this. In psychoanalysis, we could be called death drive, or the unconscious in some ways. In biology, it's called evolution. You know, evolution is this kind of like antagonism that in life itself that creates all of this destruction and death, and beauty and complexity. And in physics, you have superpositioning, wave, particle duality. These are kind of, that's a physics way of talking about this antagonism, the structure of being. So weirdly, here again is another step into the trauma. Now it's not just your trauma, now it's not just the trauma that we share together, now it's something about the very nature of reality itself. And then I say the last step is metaphysics, which is the craziest claim of all, which is that there is at the very ground of being an antagonism. And so in your experience of doubt, complexity and ambiguity, in your experience of trauma and loss, you're actually connecting in some way with the very source of everything. Now, I say most other systems, like confessional theology at every point wants to say, no, right? You know, you can go a little bit into the brokenness and the trauma, but underneath, there is something that sustains us, that's whole and complete and all that. One of the issues for me, right, is because at first when I say that, all of you will hopefully be going, Pyrotheology sounds horrible, right? I kind of liked it because a little bit of doubting on the way, and it's okay to mourn. I like that, but this sounds crazy. But it's the same in psychoanalysis. People go to psychoanalysis because they want to be fixed. And sadly in psychoanalysis, what you discover is that really very gradually you go, no, there's no fixing. There's just a tarrying with the trauma, a finding a way of positivizing it and of healing through kind of bringing it with you in some sort of way. That actually all of the problems arise from trying to get rid of it, trying to pretend it isn't there. That's where all the issues arise. I think a good example of this, to try to start convincing you slowly. You don't have to be convinced. You can be wrong if you want. That's totally fine. You know? But there's still, you know, something of value, hopefully, in the pyrotheological approach. But I do want to. The reason why it's theological, right, is because it's saying that there's something at the core of Christianity that is about embracing a fracture within ourselves, which, of course, and I'll probably get to this by Wednesday or Thursday, you see in this claim, my God, why have you forsaken me? Which is in a sense symbolic, you can say, as a rupture within the structure of reality itself. But think about it, there's 2 ways to create a social bond, broadly speaking. One, which is the common way, which is we create a social bond through what we share, through our excess, through what we believe, through our race or our gender or our mission statement or our geographical location. We create social bonds through what we have in common, right? And that's the most common type of social bond. But there's a fundamental problem with that from this perspective, the psychoanalytic perspective, which is that then it has to repress the lack. It has to erase something. Every time we try to relate in terms of what we share in common, and we share lots in common, many of us, we share something in common. But when we fully try to create a community through a shared mission statement, a shared set of beliefs, a shared religious ideology, something gets erased. And that is the doubt, the trauma, the lack, the antagonism. These get covered over. Technically, that's what ideology is. Ideology is a system of thought that covers over the ambiguities and the contradictions of existence, rendering them palatable or understandable, trying to rid us of these fractures in our being. So we unify in what we all share. So the lack gets one of three things. It either gets repressed, right, which means that the doubt, the lacks, the traumas, this antagonism gets pushed down and we ignore it, but then it comes back. So when you repress, Freud says there's always a return of the repressed, which means that the most common form of the return of the repressed is scapegoating. We are all unified, we have the answer, we have the truth. So, but there's some other community that's just getting in the way. Some other group, something out there that's just preventing everything from being perfect. We already have the answer, we already have it all, but there's some external force that's threatening that. It's the cultural Marxists, it's the immigrants, it's this or it's that. There's some group that are threatening the excess, the thing that we have in common. So the obvious example is fascism. The fascist community is the community that says, we have an organic unity and harmony and connection with the environment. We are organically connected to the earth, blood and soil. But there is this group, the figure of the Jew, the Jewish community, who threaten that, who disturb that unity and that harmony. They are the enemy, we have to destroy them. But actually, what happens is the Jewish community in the fantasy of the fascist is actually what allows fascism to continue. It allows the fascist community to paper over the inherent social antagonisms within the group, the inherent problems that exist. You put it onto somebody else. So if you actually got rid of the other community, you wouldn't have success, you'd have failure. Right? This is the interesting thing about this structure is this community you're trying to get rid of is actually what holds you together. And if you got rid of it, you wouldn't find some sort of joy and completeness. You would find that actually the problems that you think are on them are actually inherent to you. Now, I'm not saying this is the case, but I think sometimes you can see this in a very legitimate target. So you have a political leader who is the enemy, who then contains all of the problems. They are the problem. What happens is you start to purify yourself. So this is the community that's pure and good and right. That's where all the evil and the bad is. If only we got rid of that, everything would be wonderful. What that figure is doing is they're allowing us to distance ourselves from inherent antagonisms within the political community itself. So if you got rid of the figure, this is great. It's great to have a figure who's an idiot, because then they're really good at projecting onto you, right? But if you get rid of them, what happens is actually you may discover that all of the social antagonisms that they represent are actually inherently within the society itself. This is an example of like a hypochondriac, right? A hypochondriac who thinks they've got cancer, right? They hate the cancer. I've got cancer and I want to get rid of it. But of course they don't. They love their cancer, right? The hypochondriac is always fantasizing about the cancer, always thinking about it, always trying to get rid of it. Why? Well, because the hypochondriac, let's say, has an anxiety. They have anxiety. So what happens is they then create something that can contain that anxiety, right? So it's the reason why I feel anxious is because I got cancer, right? And then they can fantasize about how to get rid of the anxiety, which is to get rid of the cancer. But the cancer is what binds the anxiety. So you have, somebody sleeping at night and you're always thinking there's a murderer in the cupboard, right? And you think that's bad. No, that's not. That's saving you from something even worse. You're binding your anxiety to a murderer in the cupboard. And so whenever people say, oh, well, there's no murderer in the cupboard, and they keep on thinking, no, you're dumb. The person, of course, knows there's no murderer in the cupboard, right? But not at night. At night, they're like, there's definitely someone in the cupboard. I have to check 3 times, right? But that's protecting from something even worse. It's a way of binding the anxiety to something concrete. And then what we don't understand, if we're telling the person there's nobody in the cupboard, right? Don't understand is that actually the person, it sounds weird, unconsciously wants there to be someone, not wants there to be someone in the cupboard, wants something to bind the anxiety. That's the reason why I can't sleep. There's someone in the cupboard, right? That's the problem. So weirdly, you need your enemy. You need the very thing that you hate because it binds your anxiety. So with the hypochondriac, you go like, I have cancer, I have cancer, I have cancer. They need the cancer to kind of like distance themselves from their own internal antagonisms and anxieties. Just like a child says there's a monster under the bed. The monster isn't under the bed, the monster is inside them. But the first thing you do, you distance yourself from the monster, you put the anxiety onto something external. Until you're able to very gradually understand that the anxiety is within you. So a hypochondriac then who finds out they have got cancer, what happens there? So you're a hypochondriac, you think you've got cancer, and then you find out you have got cancer. Well, the problem is you're psychically invested in having the cancer. So although you can go, brilliant, I'm not paranoid, I actually have the cancer. You are paranoid, you just happen to have. It's like they say, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean the FBI aren't trying to get you. Right? You may be paranoid that the FBI are trying to get you, and then you find out the FBI are trying to get you. Doesn't mean you're not paranoid. Or if you're really jealous because you think your partner's cheating on you, and then you find out your partner is cheating on you, doesn't mean you're not paranoid, it just means you're right. Okay, because you may structurally require your partner to cheat on you, and just the fact that they are cheating on you is just an empirical proof, but you're still paranoid as hell, right? So it gets a bit complicated. And by the way, a lot of the reason why people have jealousies is people think, oh, you have jealousy because you love someone, but no, generally unconsciously, the only way you can love someone is to be jealous of them. For some people, the structure is, I keep my desire for you alive by always thinking there is a threat about to take you away. So unconsciously, the person is only able to maintain their desire by fantasizing that someone is about to take their partner away. So weirdly, if you get rid of the jealousy, you're not left with love and desire, you're left with nothing. Kind of making love ideas, like the obstacle is what continues to generate the desire. That's an aside, it doesn't matter. But, the hypochondriac finds out they have cancer, but they're weirdly invested in having it. Contrast that with someone who's not a hypochondriac, but who finds out they have cancer. They are not libidinally invested in the disease, right? So they can more actively fight against it, because they don't want it. They don't even want it unconsciously. There's no kind of sense of this disease holds me together. I bind my anxiety to it, so in some weird sense I need it. You go, no, I have this and I want to get rid of it. And so you can actually more effectively fight it. In the same way, if you have a political figure who is holding you together, who is actually able to help you fantasize that your community is pure and good, and what's called the beautiful soul, people call it the beautiful soul, that I am the beautiful soul and there's all the evil, then we are unconsciously invested in keeping the enemy. Of course we want to keep the enemy because the enemy does something. It binds our anxiety, it stops us from looking at the lack that is within our community. So if we got rid of the enemy, all we'd be left with is looking at how crap we all are. And look at you, so you're all crap, I can tell. Guys, why else would you be here? And, it's like the kulaks in Soviet Russia. The kulaks were the problem. They were the peasants who kind of owned the means of production, they had money, and so they were persecuted. But while the Soviet system had the kulaks, you could blame everything on them. Everything's great, everything be wonderful. They are this contingent problem that's causing issues. The problem is, in Soviet Russia, they're a tough bunch, right? So they get rid of the kulaks. The persecution is too successful. So what happens? Well, what happens is they had to start expanding the definition of what a kulak was, because they required a kulak. So now a kulak was someone who, had only a very modest means of production, or had a slightly larger field than some other people. And eventually a kulak was just someone who thought like a kulak, or someone is a kulak if they would think like a kulak if they had the chance. In other words, you just always have to have an enemy. Or you think about it like in school, those people who always have to have someone to slag off. They always have to have another who is the problem, because that stops them from looking at their life. So that's repression and return to repressed. There's two others I don't think we've got time to look at. What time is it, Jace? 12:30, okay. Very quickly I'll mention the other ones, okay. The second way we often avoid lack when we're in a community is through disavowal. And this works in a slightly different way. Simone Weil once asked the question, what does a miser lose when he loses his fortune? And what she was referring to is Aesop's fable. Famously, this miser goes to the bottom of his garden every week and counts this treasure that's buried under a tree. He never spends it, like a true miser. He never spends it, he just counts the money and goes back to his house. But one day, a criminal sees this. And so whenever the miser goes back to his house, the criminal goes, steals all the money. So the next Sunday, the miser goes to the bottom of his garden, digs up the treasure, and there's nothing there, just a hole. And he screams out because he's so upset. And he screams so loudly that some of the neighbours hear, and they come over to him and say, what's wrong? And I said, well, I have this money that I buried here, and every week I count it. And I came back this Sunday and it's gone, someone's stolen it. And in Aesop's fable, one of the neighbours says, but you never spent it. And he says, no. And then the neighbour picks up some rocks, throws them into the hole, and says, well, count those, it'll do you just as much good. Right? And it's a really interesting thought experiment that Simone Weil asks. So, well, what did he lose? Because he's upset. So he definitely lost something. Whenever there's anxiety, there's always a cause, right? So he's upset, he's crying. But in one way, he didn't really lose anything. Yes, he lost the money, but he never used it. So he can't be crying about that. So what is upsetting him so much? And Lacan then takes this on, and Lacan basically says, what the miser loses is the phantasmic object that prevents the miser from looking at the lack that is within his life. So traditionally, a miser has a rubbish life. They've got terrible friendships, they live in squalor, they don't wash, they do all of that. So the bit of the typical miser. But as long as they've got their wealth, they seem to not emotionally experience the trauma of their life. Right? They seem to be able to weirdly ignore it. They know it's there, they can talk about it, they can see it, but strangely they're detached from it. Right? So think about it like a relationship. I had a friend who his life was falling apart, but he was deeply in love with this girl. And it was kind of like this relationship where they were together a bit and apart a bit, but weirdly, while she existed as a possibility, never really as a relationship, while she existed as a possibility, he didn't seem to emotionally connect with the fact that his life was miserable. But then when he lost her, when she became completely inaccessible, he suddenly was confronted emotionally with his life. And then he changed his job, he changed where he lived, and all that kind of stuff, right? But the idea was, it was while he had this, what's called a fetish object, an object that is not magical, but we treat it as if it is. This object, this woman, as long as that she was in his life psychically as a possibility, he didn't see the lack. And then when he lost her, like this happens a lot. I know some people who lost their son, and they kept the room exactly as it was before he died. And they mourned and all of that, but the husband, the guy, he was a very quiet man, very dignified and very quiet man. And really it was only when they took the room apart years later that in some respects he broke down. that weirdly the room being kept as it was a way weirdly to emotionally detach from the trauma that was being experienced. And sadly, the problem is that there's a reason for doing that, so you should never take away that fetish object before it should be taken away. But there's a point when, in order to confront the lack, that object has to be taken away. The third, very quickly, can be called foreclosure. And this is the weirdest one of all. It's where this lack that I'm talking about, the trauma that is part of being human, and I've talked about that elsewhere in seminars, you can find, but the trauma that is being human, it doesn't even enter the person psychologically. So it's not even something that's repressed, it's not something that's distanced from emotionally, it doesn't even enter the person. They don't suffer any doubt, complexity, or ambiguity. They seem to kind of be impervious to this lack. It hasn't found a way to express itself. And so what happens then, if I understand the theory well enough, is, and this is psychosis, by the way. Psychosis is where you don't experience lack, you become the lack. It's called the loss returns in the real, which means your ego dissipates. You don't know where you start and you stop sometimes. You have out-of-body experiences. Your ego fragments. So in other words, you don't have a way of expressing the lack, but you become the lack. In the psychotic experience, you're overtaken by voices. You don't know where the boundary of your body is. So these are all ways in which trauma and lack and the antagonism of life express themselves in social bonds. But there's a different way of creating a social link that's connected with the theory of pyrotheology. And before I move on, let's just take Tinder as an example of what I'm talking about. You know, in Tinder or any dating app, there's basically one reason why people are on dating apps. And the one reason is you experience a lack of some kind. You're lonely. You don't feel complete, right? That's the reason why everyone's doing Tinder or Match.com or whatever, because there is, in a sense, of going like, I feel alone, I feel isolated, I want to have some connection with someone. But if you look at dating apps, this is the one thing that nobody mentions. Every dating app, everybody is expressing themselves as if they are happy, whole, and complete. All of the pictures make them look like they're having a blast. Men are topless, taming lions, and, you know, women are playing beach ball while drinking sex on the beach, whatever, I don't know. But, you know, and when you read the descriptions, everybody's, it's what they enjoy, it's what they like, it's how much fun they have. And so, weirdly, the one thing that brings you to a dating app, which is your lack, is the one thing that is completely covered over. I mean, not completely, but if you do talk about your lack, you're never going to connect with anybody. I mean, if you have the picture of you being depressed, crying, touching a security blanket with, like, I think life is despair, and then you die, you're not going to die. I've tried it. You're not getting any hits. Okay, it doesn't work. So we weirdly give up our excess on dating apps. We also do it in parties. Parties are, by definition, antisocial spaces. It's funny that the most antisocial space is a party, because at a party, everybody is putting their best foot forward. You're showing what I can do and who I am and what I've accomplished. In Los Angeles, when these parties are, it's all about who's in the room, who's the cooler person to talk to, you know, and it's always moving around. Everybody, in a sense, is trying to express their positivity and who they are and how great they are. And that is not, you can't connect with people in that way. You're never going to get beyond adoration or jealousy. You're never going to get beyond those kinds of emotions. Because here's the interesting thing. In order to experience a genuine friendship or genuine connection, our social bond has to connect with lack. Love, Lacan says, love is this. Love is giving what you do not have to someone who does not want it. Love is giving what you do not have to someone who doesn't want it. Okay, what does it mean? Well, one way of describing that is, he says, well, what you do, instead of giving who you are and all the greatness that you are, there's a moment where you go, I'm lacking. Why? Because I desire. Desire is lack. If I desire something, I feel I'm lacking, and I desire you. So there's something in me that's lacking, and I'm going to show that. I'm going to give you my lack, which is what you're doing. To give desire is to give your lack, right? To someone who doesn't want it. Because in a sense, I want you to complete me. I want you to be full of me. I want you to kind of like somehow make me whole. I don't want your lack. That sounds awful. I don't want your trauma. I don't want your suffering. I don't want your doubt and hunger. I don't want any of that. I want to be around you. It's all amazing, and you're going to make my life fantastic. And you're a rock star. It's going to be. I want to sniff cocaine all day. And it's going to be amazing. I don't want your lack. But love is this weird moment that very rarely happens, like a miracle when it does. But where two people can share the lack. And the other person who doesn't really want it, but accepts it and actually does enjoy it. So when two people share their life. But that's what's missing in parties. Al de Bouton talks about this nice little video on YouTube where it's brilliant, it's so counterintuitive, where he says, if you're social people hate parties. If you're the type of person who goes to bed at 9 o'clock rather than go out to that crazy party, that's not because you're antisocial. That's because you know that the most antisocial place you can be is a party. Right? Because it's at the party that you're not going to be able to connect with people at that level. And like miracles happen. And we all know that occasionally at a good party that occurs. So all of this to say, there's a different way to create a social bond. And I'll use one example from America, where I think this happens, and it's actually Burning Man. I've never been. Has anybody been to Burning Man? Is it Ryan or Andrea? No, nobody. I kind of look like Burning Man in some ways is maybe the worst example because it's a very new age kind of space. It's all drugs and new age and all that. But the interesting thing about Burning Man, I think what makes it so interesting and unique, is that the central ritual of the event is the destruction of something. That the social bonds in Burning Man is around the destruction of this thing that's built. Like that connects with its founder. Supposedly the story is this guy lost this woman that he loved, and he couldn't get over it. And he talked about it all the time with his friends, but he bored him senseless. So they brought him down to the beach and they killed him. They brought him down to the beach and they built something, and they burnt it as a symbol of kind of letting something go. And they were, this circle of friends burning this effigy, right? And then it grew from there to now what Burning Man is. But there's two things they burn at least. I don't even know where it is, but there's also the temple, isn't there? And then in the temple, you go and you put things in, you write stuff. And basically you write the difficult things, the tough things, and you put it in the temple. And then on the last day, you set fire to the temple. And again, the social bond is everybody sharing a loss together. And that sharing of the loss is healing. It's not that, you mourn and then you kind of reconstruct and heal. It's like, no, the mourning is the healing, right? There's no one and then the other. It's like seeking and finding. And it's that biblical idea, you seek and you will find. But actually the literal translation is seeking, and seeking you find. There's no difference. It's not like you're seeking something and then you find it. It's seeking is finding. Asking is receiving. Knocking is the door being open. The sharing of the loss is the healing. A wake is an Irish ritual where you traditionally stand over a dead body and you stay with the body of the dead for 24 hours. But it also has come to mean the getting together after a funeral, where you drink together, you toast the dead person together, you laugh together about stories, old stories, and you cry together. And what a wake is it's a connecting of a social bond around a loss, a shared loss. And the interesting thing is in Christianity, you have the central sacramental act, which is the Last Supper. What is that? That is a group of people creating a social bond around a shared loss, the death of God. So and then I think there's some like Salvation Army stuff, you don't do any sacramental stuff, that's the one thing they do. So that's kind of like the one thing you find right across the board is this idea that the Last Supper is somehow central. And it is a social bond based on embracing this lack. And of course, the idea of the Last Supper is as you do it, there is a return. There is something, there's a positivizing this, the return of God. You do this in remembrance of me, there I am among you. Right? So all of this to say that what we're trying to do here in Wake is create a social, like pop-up community as Adam talked about, but that is not connected with what we share ideologically together and that, this and that, but somehow is sharing our coming to terms with the inherent nature of doubt, complexity, ambiguity, and suffering to life, and that is actually something that is inherent to life itself and also to the theological tradition itself. The theological tradition doesn't make room for that. It is that. It is drawing us into that in a way that brings true healing and true joy. Okay, we've got a couple of minutes for questions. What time is it there, Jason? 10 to. Just, anyone want to throw in something about that? We've got like 5 minutes before we have to stop this session. But any question or comment about this notion of the shared lack? Oh, yes, I'll go for it.
I have a question. Thank you. So the person who projects their lack onto another person.
Yeah.
Can you speak to a little bit about the person that attracts that person? Can you tell me what is the person who attracts the need to be objectified?
Oh, you're saying that they...
You know what I mean? Like the person who takes it, actually, like, oh, that person is so obsessed with me. You know, like the obsession.
There's some people who like they take that lack on. Is that what you're saying? You want me to talk about that? Yes.
That's too vague.
No, I think I know what you mean, but I might go off on a tangent, so I want to keep right. Like the first thing I think about is there are certain people who they like to be martyrs. You see this with a lot of mothers, not all mothers at all, of course, but you know the mother who wants to just sacrifice to their child completely. It's not about me, but it's almost like they're suffering and suffering and suffering, but you can see they're enjoying their suffering, right? It's like, oh, you know, I'm always having to give them lifts everywhere. I'm always having to cook them, always this. So there's something like they really like it, right? It's in church as the person who's always giving to the church, and it's like too sacrificial. There's too much sacrifice. You know, an obsessive doesn't sacrifice enough, interestingly, but an hysteric sacrifices too much. And so that's always interesting. Like if someone supports me, this doesn't happen now. But sometimes with Icon, someone will come and they'll want to give loads of money to it or something. But you've got to work out whether that's coming from a place of they want to disappear entirely. You know, that they're getting some pleasure out of like this sacrificial act. Then you can't take the money because it's very, very dangerous. It's playing into one of their symptoms. Whereas if it's an obsessive, you kind of sometimes have to get them to be more sacrificial because they want to hold on to everything. And I don't think you're talking about that. Or are you? Or do you want to give me more?
I think, oh my gosh, I should have thought it through a little bit. Sorry, can I interrupt?
I think it's the person who always needs the needy person. So it's the person they're in a relationship with someone, but they can't be in a relationship with someone unless they're needy.
Right, like almost like they're addicted to the story of the person that's they're addicted to the story of being the object of someone's desire. That's their fetish object. Being the fetish object.
So they want to. Okay, well, this is, I mean, this maybe is a sideways approach, but some of you will have heard me say this before, but what you're bringing up, I think, is the fact that we're so interconnected, first of all, that all of these structures we tend to atomize things, when actually a lot of political structures and our social structures are all interconnected. So I probably don't have time actually to answer this. Are you back to tell us we're about to finish off? No, I'll say this very quickly.
There is only an hour for lunch today. So
Yes. Oh yeah, we give people plenty of time. But I mean, a good way of understanding how we can be bound up in these weird psychic structures is that idea of two people going out, two people being married. And this is a true example. I have a couple of friends that are married 10 years. The desire is out of the relationship. They're not sleeping together, not doing any of that. They're still friends, but there's no desire really in the relationship. And then he falls for this other girl. So we call them Jack and Jill and Snow White, right? Because that's their real names, weirdly. So it's Jack and Jill, and Jack falls in love with Snow White, and but he can't be with Snow White because he's saying, I can't be with you because I'm married. I'm married, so I can't be with you, but I'd love to be with you. Oh, it'll be amazing, well, it'll be amazing if we were together. But then the brief affair is found out. So Jill is like, well, move out. You need to be out of this house. And Jack's like, great, can be out now, can be fine to be with Snow White. And Snow White's happy, fine, Jack can be with Snow White. But that doesn't happen. Right? If you're an alien from outer space, that's what you think would happen. You go, okay, well, Jack and Jill, they're not really desiring each other too much, so they're happy to break up. And Jack wants to go out with Snow White, so obviously he's going to go out with Snow White. And so, it'll resolve a little bit of pain around, but everyone eventually gets what they want to some extent. But we all know that that's not what happens most of the time. Most of the time, what happens in this example, is within a week, Jack and Jill are sleeping together again, they're having sex like rabbits, and they're going off on like some little honeymoon. Snow White is nowhere to be seen, right? Snow White is completely off the picture. And you're like, what the hell? And even though Jack and Jill are still annoyed at each other, right? Jill is really annoyed at Jack for the lies, the deception. Jack is annoyed at Jill because he feels like the relationship, there's been no passion or desire, it's over anyway. So they all hate each other consciously, but unconsciously they're like so bound up to each other. What is going on? Well, it's a weird structure where for Jill, her objective desire, for Jack, let's say, Jack desires Snow White. He desires Snow White, and Jill is in the way. But actually, Jill, as an obstacle, is what makes Jack desire Snow White. The fact that she's impossible makes her desires. So he's a typical obsessive. Obsessives generally only want what they can have. So they desire the other person's partner, right there. They're always desiring the impossible object. So as soon as the impossibility is taken away, as soon as Jill says clear off, Jack's like, I would never want to go out with Snow White, she's mental. I thought it would be a ridiculous thing, you know? It's like the scales drop from his eye, he's like, what? No way! But what's happening with Jill? Well, Jill in this example is kind of acting more what psychoanalysis calls an hysteric way, which is an hysteric desires what's under threat of being taken away. So they can only desire what they have when it's under threat of removal. So Snow White is what's threatening the removal of Jack. And so that causes her desire for Jack. So now Jack and Jill are like sleeping there. And of course this just happens repeatedly. This is not a good way to keep desire alive, but it's one of the ways it happens. We know it very well. There's healthier ways of doing it. But that's just an example of how that we can play these rules. It's always interesting what rules that we allow ourselves to play. And the question is, what do we get out of the pleasure of these rules? And if we're doing something that is destructive, the weird question asked is, what do I get out of it? So I'll give one example and then we'll stop. But I like this because here's a political question which is confounding people, which is why do people vote for oppressive political systems that oppress them? Or why do people go to churches that are obviously bad for them? Right? Why do people do that? And the answer used to be, the liberal answer is education. If you educate people, they will learn and they will stop going to the stupid church. Right? So there's a prosperity church which is telling you, you can be rich and wealthy and all of that money can be yours. Just keep believing, keep praying the prayer, and it'll all be wonderful, right? And so you come along and you go, here's the statistics that say it doesn't work. Right? There's no statistical difference between people in your community and this church getting rich. There is no connection between this church and wealth creation. There's the stats, right? Sociologist comes along, lays it all out. She's a sociologist. There it is. Doesn't work. I think that's what sociologists do. I don't know. But then of course we discover that it doesn't seem to have any effect at all. I mean, maybe some people are influenced by the stats, but a lot of people, they continue to just be part of oppressive systems. So you go, okay, what is the issue? Well, The psychoanalytic response is the failure of the church is exactly what keeps us enslaved to it. Right? It's actually the fact that it doesn't work, which is its power. Right? So take gambling. People think that gamblers are addicted to winning, but more often than not, they're addicted to losing. Right? Because when you lose repeatedly, it generates a fantasy of how great the win would be. So the more you lose, the more the win. It's like, oh my goodness, that would fix everything, that would solve everything. If you kept winning in gambling, you get over the addiction pretty quick. It's like playing slot machines is boring. You might make some money, but there's more fun ways to make money, right? It's the perpetual losing generates the fantasy of what it would be like to win. So in the same way, you go to a prosperity church, it's continually telling you how amazing it will be to have all this money and how all your problems will be solved and God will vanquish your enemies. So you're getting this fantasy, and the fact that you're not getting an effort just makes the fantasy all the stronger. The more you feel, the more the oppression is, the stronger the fantasy becomes, and the more enslaved to the fantasy you are. If it did succeed, if the church did get you wealthy and did vanquish all your enemies, then it would feel. Because then you realize, oh, the anxiety isn't because, my external world is problematic. The anxiety is because my internal world is problematic. You think an insomniac, the problem is, you just have to have a very quiet room and a black enough room and it'll all fix. The insomniac is always looking for something just disturbing their sleep. And they'll find anything. And if everything's completely silent, it'll be their own heartbeat, right? The insomniac's like, no matter how perfect your external world, if your internal world is at fault, it doesn't matter, right? So the very successful, if you get all the money, it feels, why? Because you realize it doesn't hold. Having loads of money might get you a nicer shower and a nicer air conditioning, but it doesn't fill the lack of your being. Yeah. So weirdly, it's actually people give themselves, say, to a church that's giving this fantasy. They give it precisely because they always feel to do the things that it tells you to. The people who do it all, maybe some of you, those crazy people, the idiots who actually do everything, right? You go, okay, I want to become an elder. I have to read the whole Bible. I have to do this. I have to do that. I have to throw my whole record collection in the ocean, right? You don't have to do that. No, you just have to unsubscribe from Spotify, which is a bit rubbish. And in the old days, you had to bring your whole music collection down to the ocean, right? You do all of that. So you do it all. Then you realize it doesn't hold. Then you become free of the fantasy. It's the very going all the way that allows you to find a way of, this doesn't hold, the center doesn't hold. But if you don't do all of that, you're always left with a residual fantasy that if you did, everything would be wonderful. So I don't know why that's connected with anything, but it's important. Okay, we're going to take a break. Alan?
I got two really quick things to say. Anyway, the most important one is about Wi-Fi.
Wi-Fi.
So that's